So this is my rustic cabin motif. So we'll get started by working on our roof here. I'm going to come in with some of this bare from my woodlands set and start to lay down the base layer here. And this little lean-to roof. And I'll get a little bit of brown here in this eave area. I'll put brown under this shadow here. That's going to be green. And now I'll come in here and start to just put a few strokes here and there into this cabin with different shades of this brown right away with more or less water. And you can make your cabin whatever color you want. I've done classes before and you can't believe all the cool different ways that people make this. A lot of people like to use kind of an orange kind of type of wood. Maybe from this, they were using this woodland set. And some people got very colorful with theirs. So I'm going to take this and add a little bit of this gray stone to it, maybe a bit of shadow, which is like a black. I'm going to try this out on the strip of paper that I provide in all of your Take and Paints. And now I'm going to come in here with this tone. Should look a little darker than what we started with and start to follow some of these lines that are drawn in the background. And come in here and just, well, okay, I dropped my brush there. It worked out all right. And I'm following the direction of the line here. And I actually have my fat brush because I was using that for another video I did. So I'm going to come back in and get this small brush. That way I can come in here and get these finer lines. It's still going to bleed a little bit because it's wet on wet at this point. Put a shadow on that eave right there and along this side. I want to get some of these lines right next to the window so it doesn't look like there's a white line around it. And I'm going to get some dark down here at the bottom and around this door. Now I'm going to come in and get this rusty color. And in my original, I left more white of the paper in the background. It's just a personal choice, and I was using that fat brush, so I didn't have as much of that happening here. And I'll come in here and balance this out so they look similar. And then I've got this deep shadow underneath here because this is underneath that roof. And that's the green from the tree behind. Those are all. The thing we need to paint here are, that's the tree trunk. So we'll want to get our porch kind of overgrown here. And I did, some people did their door in like a nice orangey color, so I'll do that idea here. In my reference, I had a gray charcoal look, and I think this is fun. I get a lot of ideas from all the people that take my classes. I teach in-person classes in Charlotte, And it's really a lot of fun, and I get a chance to see how people do well or struggle with a particular motif or instruction so that I can bring, like these videos, I can do a really good job because I already know what some of the downfalls are. You're welcome to email me if you've got any questions about any of these motifs, and I'll try to answer as best I can or send you some of my other video resources. I have some on how to just basically use the brush or how to mix colors, so I'm assuming you've looked at those before we do this one. I'm getting a very light blue here because I'm going to just tap in what looks like a little bit of a window. Take some of that color away. And of course under here it really won't look blue, but I'm just going to put the impression in there, and I'll come back in and add some darker layers to this in a minute. So we'll start over here and do this green, this evergreen tree. And this is what I do. It's very hard to see sometimes in my classes. I'm kind of dancing the very tip of my brush, just depositing the paint as I go, and sort of using these lines as an idea to connect. We can always go back in and fill in this white and make those line areas darker, but it's good to go ahead and lay down this texture in the first pass, leaving the white of the paper. So of course it's going to be a little more condensed in the top of the tree, could be a little more open as those branches naturally get longer. And I would probably come in here and, not red, and make a darker green that I can try out over here, and just kind of still put a few more deposits of paint just to get two tones in here while it's wet. And then we can go back in and put something else in afterward. Grab this down here. All right, and we've got this right here is some shrubberies. This is the trunk, I think, of that tree. And then we've got some of this daylight, sort of yellow in here. I'll add a little bit of green into that just to add variety. And now I've got this greenery here. Filling that in on first pass. Now I've put my hand in this green, so I want to be careful not to put it into my drawing over here. So I'll move this out of the way. Usually I keep it over here to the side. Okay. Doing the same thing over there, and along here we'll go and get those. Now I will tell you, when I do a class, I have what is called a practice mat, and we practice little areas of this individually just to get the idea of the brush. So if you're new to painting, you may want to take one of my video classes if you're not in our area, and that way you get the basics down before you get into this. This is just a demo so that if you've taken a class, you kind of already know watercolor, you can figure it out. Or if you're kind of crafty, this may make a lot of sense to you. If it doesn't, you can still do watercolor. You just might need to start at a more basic level. Okay, so I was working on some of this greenery here in the background. Just kind of dancing my brush around here. And this is kind of up to creative license because there are no lines, so you can decide what you want to do. I've kind of got this sandy green color. And I can kind of get up into those. They're so dry, they're not even actually affected there. So I'm just going to tap in some color here, and I don't have to go all the way to the bottom. I can leave the white of the paper or go down to the bottom if I want. I can go and close in some of these white lines that are around here with a clear brush, but wipe it off in between if you're changing color areas because it'll carry the pigment with it. I'm going to come in here and just kind of loosen some of that up. So now I'm going to do a little bit of a wet area here and drop some paint in. If you want it to be precise, you want to really go around those edges. We can do that again later. You can do it first and don't do the wet on wet. And then I can drop some more into that. And I'm putting a little bit of this daylight and green that I mixed up into the background to offer the impression of some shadows and highlights as the sun comes through the woods there. And probably put a little bit under here. So now I'll go back into these areas and I can leave a little bit of the white of the paper. So I didn't do the technique that I just showed you over here. It's wet paint on dry paper, and I'm leaving the white as an effect of seeing through the trees as opposed to the background where it's less descript. And we will do that trunk of the tree in a second. Pop in a little bit of that light green on top of the darker green just to add variance and interest here. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of this black and add it to that green and put some darker areas. Which I'll definitely do once this starts to dry in a minute. Okay, now I'm going to get this tree trunk. I'm going to basically come in here and draw this stripe. My brush was not very wet, so kind of actually made a nice little texture there. I'm going to get this sand color. I'm hoping for two tones. That didn't really work out in that case. You can leave the white of the paper. And I'm going to come back in here and fill in these tree trunks that are in the distance, sort of an impression of the woods over here. Some sticks. Maybe it's springtime and it's just and then we'll move to doing the sky. Now, I did mine in kind of a smoky, kind of dusk type sky, although I do see this light that's coming through here, so unless the light is kind of low in the sky, or peeping through the clouds in an area that doesn't exactly make sense. So it's up to you how you want to interpret that. I use my medium brush. Now you can see I got some of the green from my tree because that was so wet into this area, which is fine. Those colors will be okay together, but ideally you don't want to do that. And so I'm just going to move around here and put in some of this dusky color sky. And I'm trying to be mindful of what lines I'm making. I want to go around this tree pretty good without getting it into these areas. And then I'm going to pop some blue into here. It is kind of nice to practice a little bit first, and you can always take any piece of paper, even the strip that I gave you, and kind of practice what colors you want to use for the sky back in here and sort of see how that looks first. And you can see I've gotten kind of messy with this brush here, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep hustling through here and kind of like it that it's blue over there since that's where the sun seems to be shining. I'm going to add a little bit of that dusky color sky in there also.